Okay, everyone. In this lecture, we're going to be talking about the biological basis of behavior. You think about the subfields of psychology, biopsychology, physiological psychology, neuropsychology. These are fields that are interested in the biological basis of behavior, and that's what we're going to be talking about now. The fundamental system that the biopsychologists study be the nervous system, and this is our electrochemical communication system. This is obviously necessary for our survival. Everything that we do is based on what is going on in our nervous system. And if we take a look at our nervous system, notice that there are several characteristics of it that you should understand. For one thing, it is very complex. There are billions of neurons, and neurons are those individual cells in the nervous system, billions of them, sending messages, receiving messages, and activating processes. So they perform so many important functions in our body, and it's an amazement that about the amount of stuff that it can do. It's extremely complex. When I am speaking to you right now, recording this lecture, nervous system, there are neurons that are essentially activating my voice. They're allowing me to speak. That are making connections in my brain to think about what I'm going to be talking about. So the fact that I can do all of this is a testament to the complexity of the nervous system. It is also a testament to the integration of it, the fact that the brain can integrate all of the different things we're doing. So here I am talking to you. I'm looking at the computer screen as I'm talking to you. Maybe I'm moving my hand, although you can't see it, as I'm speaking. Basically, I'm doing all of this. In the meantime, my lungs are working, I'm breathing, my heart is pumping blood throughout my body. All of these things are happening, keeping me alive as I'm talking to you. And the brain is essentially in control of all of these functions. Okay? The brain is controlling my heartbeat. It is controlling my breathing. It's controlling my hand movement. It's controlling my voice. It's controlling my thoughts that are leading me to decide what I'm going to say. All of this is being integrated in the amazing organ of the brain. Another interesting aspect of the brain is its ability to adapt, its plasticity. Our brains change from what we experience. From what we learn through experience, our brains change. They change over time. As we learn more, our brain changes. We can also, sometimes when we have brain injuries, our brains can recover from the loss of some brain cells and can recover function. There are many examples of people who have had severe brain damage and have been able to recover a lot of their function. And again, that's a testament to the plasticity of the brain. Finally, the way the nervous system operates is through electrochemical communication. Well, what does that mean? It means that there is an electrical charge involved, so it involves electricity, but it also involves chemicals. It involves the release of chemicals, and those chemicals, as we'll talk about later, are called neurotransmitters, and essentially, so messages are sent from one neuron to another through those neurotransmitters. The activity within a single neuron involves a change in electrical charge that we'll talk about later too. So it involves both electricity and chemicals in terms of how it operates. Let's talk a little bit more about this plasticity that I just mentioned about the brain. The brain can suffer enormous injury and still in many cases can recover. Keep in mind, of course, there are certain parts of the brain that where if it is damaged, if it's injured, the person cannot recover function or is going to be severely debilitated. If you think, for example, the medulla, which controls your breathing and heart rate, if that part of the brain is damaged, then that's an enormous threat to your survival. You're probably going to die. But basically, the plasticity involves your brain's ability to modify itself after some injury, after illness, and also keep in mind that certain kinds of drugs you might take, for example, might lead you to release a whole lot of neurotransmitters, and this, over-release of neurotransmitters can actually cause damage to neurons. So, again, that would be one of the things that the brain would have to recover from. So, what are some things that can happen in the brain that can help it recover? Collateral sprouting. Well, if you look at individual neurons have different branches that can branch from, in terms of branching, making a connection between one neuron and another neuron. It's kind of like a circuit, making a connection from one point to another point. Well, if one of those branches are damaged, the individual neurons can form new sprouts, can form new branches that can make new connections to compensate for the lost connection due to injury. Substitution of function is a very important part. There are certain areas of the brain that have certain specializations. Particularly, we're talking about hemispheric specialization. You have two hemispheres, the right and the left hemisphere. And each of these hemispheres actually have certain kinds of specializations when it comes to what they do. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But bottom line is, if you have severe damage to one of those hemispheres, the other hemisphere can compensate for it. Essentially, for example, the left hemisphere basically controls the right side of your body. The right hemisphere controls the left side of your body. Well, if you have severe damage to your right hemisphere, you're going to have some problems moving the left side of your body. But over time, the left hemisphere can compensate for the damage and can control both sides of your body if that becomes necessary. Neurogenesis is the production of new neurons, and during early childhood, we're forming, neurogenesis is happening a lot. It slows down as we get older, but nevertheless, we can form new neurons again to compensate for damage. Finally, there's some interesting research about doing brain tissue grafts to try to help people recover from brain damage. So, various ways in which the brain can recover. The younger you are, the more likely you are to recover from a severe traumatic brain injury. It also means that if there's a lot of damage, there might be some damage that might be just too much for anyone. But considering the extent of the damage will determine how well the person can recover. Okay, the nervous system, as I say, it's an electrochemical communication system, and there are pathways that are followed throughout the body. And remember I said that the brain is the organizer, it's the integrator for all of the functions that are going on in your body. So it's the boss of what is going on throughout your entire nervous system. You have you have nerves or bundles of neurons that exist throughout our body, from the tips of our toes to the tops of our heads. And there needs to be some connection between the brain and all of these neurons. Well, you have afferent or sensory neurons that take in information from the environment, send information from the neurons in our body to the brain. Okay? When you stub your toe, you have a neural signal that comes from the toe to your brain telling you, ouch, that hurts. And that reflects, the sensory neurons are essentially picking up the stimulus from the environment and sending the message to your brain that your toe hurts. Meanwhile, efferent neurons are messages that are sent from the brain to the rest of the body. So the efferent nerve, essentially the message, or motor neurons, essentially sending messages from the brain to go ahead and shake that toe off shake your foot off after you stub your toe. Shake it off so you feel a little bit better. And it's sending the signal to you to shake your foot around to help you relieve the pain. And essentially, so it's telling you, so the message from the brain through the nervous system to the muscles in your foot and your knee, allowing you to move your foot to kind of to basically shake off the pain. You need your nervous system to do this. I want to kind of point out something that involves the efferent or the motor neurons, the afferent or the sensory neurons, as far as just breaking it down to a simple reflex. Simple reflex involves a pathway that does not directly involve the brain. Basically, you're able to respond to environmental stimuli and have the reflex that is just a spinal reflex. It's just happening through the spinal cord. Now, your spinal cord is part of the central nervous system. It's not the chief part, it's the brain, but nevertheless, the spinal cord can control your ability to respond to stimuli through reflex action. So let's take a look at this particular picture here. Your finger is touching the flame, and that flame is going to hurt, and it is going to cause you to jerk your hand away. But how does that process work? Well, first what you have here is you have receptors, specialized cells in your skin that pick up the stimulus of heat. It sends the message to these sensory neurons, that red pathway there, sends the message to the spinal cord. Inside your spinal cord you have what are called interneurons that connect the sensory neurons with the motor neurons. So the sensory neuron picks up the heat stimulus, or the receptors pick up the heat stimulus, send the signal to the sensory neuron, which then travels all the way to your spinal cord, to the interneuron. The interneuron then transmits the message to the motor neuron, that blue pathway. The motor neuron then stimulates the muscles in your hand to jerk your hand away from the flame. And that hand jerking away is a reflex action. And thank God it happens that quickly, otherwise we'd severely burn our finger. We need to get our hand out of the way really fast, so the body needs to have a short, quick pathway to do the reflex. Notice I have not mentioned the brain yet, because this pathway of getting your hand out of the way needs to be done very quickly. We don't have time to wait for the brain to say, hey, that hurts, we better move our hand away. No, that's possibly going to take too long. Your finger is going to burn already. But if you have that spinal reflex that jerks your hand away quickly, now, after you've done that even before your brain even registers that it hurts. You have that reflex is so quick. But now that the brain picked it up, now you say, ow, it hurts, and you shake your hand off, you might curse, whatever it is. But bottom line is, the hand moved out of the way before the brain was even involved in the process. And that's a spinal reflex. Okay, let's talk about how the nervous system is divided. You remember we talked in the chapter, if we talk about memory, how we talked about hierarchies. Well, the nervous system has a hierarchy as well. Overall, we have our nervous system, which consists of all of the billions of neurons in our body, and it is subdivided into the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. The central nervous system is further subdivided into the brain and the spinal cord. The peripheral nervous system is subdivided into the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. Now, the somatic nervous system involves our voluntary actions. The autonomic nervous system involves involuntary actions like digestion, heart rate, whatnot. The autonomic nervous system, the involuntary actions that we engage in, that can be further subdivided into the sympathetic and the parasympathetic division. The sympathetic nervous system arouses us, increases our heart rate, increases our blood flow, increases our respiration rate, and decreases our digestion, because that's not important in dealing with an emergency. The parasympathetic division calms us down, slows down our heart rate, slows down our breathing, brings back our digestion. And this is going on all the time in terms of how we respond to environmental circumstances. Okay, now let's talk about the divisions of the nervous system, starting with the central nervous system. This is basically, this is where everything begins. This is where everything is centralized. And it's basically the brain and the spinal cord. This is essentially the control center of the entire nervous system. The peripheral nervous system refers to the neurons that are in the rest of the body. Again, all the way from the top of your head to the tips of your toes. So start with the somatic the nervous system. These take in the sensory information from the environment, so in other words, your sense of touch, your pain, heat, and whatnot that you're getting from the rest of your body. It is getting this information in, delivering it to the spinal cord. It's also involved in voluntary movement. So in other words, if the neurons that control your motor functions, where you voluntarily move, that is all part of the somatic nervous system. Now, the autonomic nervous system, that's kind of the system that runs your automatic process, your heart rate, respiration, and so on. Now, the two divisions of this are very important, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. These are, the sympathetic nervous system controls what is called the fight or flight function. When there is an emergency situation, you need to essentially act quickly. You need to either fight or you need to run away. So if you're being attacked by someone, either you got to stand up and fight or you got to run away, but you got to make a decision quickly. Furthermore, not only do you need to make a decision quickly, your body needs to be mobilized to act. You need to be able to run faster than you normally do. You need to be able to punch harder than you normally do. You need to be able to be at your top level to respond to pressure, respond to an emergency. Okay? So that's when your sympathetic nervous system is active. The parasympathetic nervous system is active. That calms you down. Because once the emergency is over, you need to be able to calm yourself down, to kind of slow things down. And it kind of restores your normal digestion and whatnot. So taking away all of the, you can't stay at that high level of fight or flight for a long time. You need to be able to calm down. So let's break down some of the various things that the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system control. When the sympathetic nervous system is active, it dilates your pupil, letting as much light in as possible. Maybe looking for escape routes. Accelerate your heartbeat. Your heart needs to pump blood fast, and the blood needs to go to your muscles. The blood needs to go to your muscles and your legs so you can run. It inhibits your digestion because essentially that's not really a necessary thing for you to be doing during an emergency. And it stimulates the secretion of hormones called epinephrine or norepinephrine, which essentially also serve to arouse you and get you active and get your heart pumping. Essentially is what you need to be doing. So these are the activities of the sympathetic division. The parasympathetic division time again brings you back to normal, contracts your pupils, slows your heartbeat, and again brings your digestion back. So you can look at the sympathetic as the fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic response as the rest and digest response.